board. This is something I learned. I was, I'm a fan. I'm a student of the rave scene, obviously, right? Like I'm a rave kid. And
Drugs.
It's obvious.
Drugs
It's
and
obvious.
loud music.
Pills, baby.
Hurts your head.
And you guys ever hear of the Temple of Psychic Youth?
How do you spell that?
The THEE space Temple. Figure that one out.
Okay.
OV.
Oh.
Kind of like churches with a V, churches.
And then Psychick spelled with an H. So
Psychick.
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 PSYCHICK and then youth. You can figure that one out on your own.
The Temple of Psychick
Psychick
Youth. Okay, whatever. What drugs are they on and where can I get some?
England.
A lot, and pretty much anywhere. This is actually, didn't expect this story to be as in-depth and long as it's going to be, but bear with me. There's a lot of stuff here that I'm not even going to touch on, but I think I culled the most cool parts out of this. So the Temple of Psychic Youth was essentially an artist collective and loose conglomeration of self-described chaos magicians that formed in the early 80s
Like that.
from members of Psychick TV, which was a band, a group of musicians in England.
Oh, band.
Later members of the group Coil, Current 93, and other like-minded artists, fans, and psychedelia enthusiasts in the UK.
So it was like a consortium.
Correct, like an artist collective. The tale of the temple actually began several years earlier in the humble little country called the United States of America, where a man named William S. Burroughs was unleashing what would become the literary movement behind the Beat generation. Known to many as one of the founders of the beatnik or beat literature, Burroughs was also convinced that the reality that we experience as humans is largely dictated by magic, or to dissect a bit further, human intention. So you can kind of affect the world with your intention, which I really like. That's
I like
Yeah,
Burroughs,
I
too.
love that.
Just
Naked
focused. Great book. Crazy movie.
So to quote the man himself, William S. Burroughs, in an interview with Stephen Davis, since the word magic tends to cause confused thinking, I would like to say exactly what I mean by magic, and the magical interpretation of so-called reality. The underlying assumption of magic is the assertion of will as the primary moving force in the universe. The deep conviction that nothing happens unless somebody or some being wills it to happen. Very cool. To me, this has always been self-evident. From the viewpoint of magic, no death, no illness, no misfortune, accident, war, or riot is accidental. There are no accidents in the world of magic. William S. Burroughs.
Is this magic with a K?
No, that's with a C.
Oh.
I kept picturing it with a K too.
Yeah, it just seemed like it would be.
Yeah.
White magic, black magic.
Magic.
Gray magic.
Yep.
This type of intention or will-based influence is something that the temple founders and followers sought to explore both through their music and their deliberate attempts to subvert the ways that our communication is being codified by the man. So we're going to be quoting heavily from Dan Seatman's amazing article on... Seatman! Where you at, baby? On popmatters.com. This article is called Acid Testing, the Modern Revival of Psychic TV and the Temple of Psychic Youth.
Great website.
Fantastic website, fantastic article. This is literally like a dissertation on this band, cult, whatever you want to call it. Seatman says, or in his article, the intention of Psychic Youth was to create an anti-Muzak, M-U-Z-A-K, capable of jamming the transmission sent by civilization's institution of brainwashing and submission, church, state, and above all, corporatized media.
So Muzak is the company that makes the elevator-based music.
Is that there's a company? I just thought that was like the term for
No, it's
that
actual.
stuff.
Muzak is actual trademark term.
Really?
Yeah, it's kind of both now. It's kind of like Google. You know, you can use Google as a noun and a verb. It's like Muzak.
Okay.
Wow.
The influence of Psychic TV from a musical standpoint is only recently being brought to the mainstream as the attention shifts from the origins of acid house, psych rock, and witch house. And
Fuck, yeah.
these are kind of early precursors to what you would consider like modern kind of EDM rave type stuff. Or whatever.
IDM too. That's what Orlando had. Intelligent
IDM.
dance music. Had a whole scene here and everything.
What?
Back in the early 90s.
Like you did math while you danced, you know.
Yeah, right?
Everyone's on their like TI-83 calculators.
Doing formulas.
Doing cosine
Yeah.
and sine, doing it.
Fuck, I'm just using this to play that bowling game.
Limits. Love the limits.
It's important here to make the distinction that while historians consider the true origins of acid house to have its roots in Chicago in the 80s with artists like Lil Louis, Future, Phuture, Adonis, and Mr. Fingers, These artists were.
Mr. Finger.
That's a good.
Yeah.
That's
Wait,
the name.
let's go back to Mr. Fingers.
I actually listened to some on the way up here, and it's what you would expect. It's like kind of the early
Yeah.
but like with cool like overlay stuff. It's cool.
I'm so intrigued.
So these early acid house artists were actually surprised to hear that the quote unquote acid movement was picking up steam in places like England, India, and Goa, which is Goa is like a big like dance kind of rave scene, and abroad. And in truth, a lot of the initial Psychic TV sound was supposedly created without knowledge of these Chicago-based bands. So they kind of almost developed in different silos.
It was an organic movement.
Correct.
What is exactly acid? Is it just a fusion of the different genres? Like, is that defined?
Yeah, I would say, I don't know. To me, it doesn't necessarily belie like LSD, like consumption
just like
of
a heavy beat
it's
or
just,
something, maybe?
Yeah, something to
Early
differentiate.
industrial.
Yeah, exactly.
There you go.
Something to
That would make sense.
differentiate that industrial acid, that kind of like grimy, metallic, whatever. Yeah, exactly.
Good.
When I think acid, that's what I think.
So both of these movements essentially develop themselves, independent of each other. But the core tenet being the desire to kind of disconnect from the rat race and explore the depths of the mind through esotericism and/or drugs,
Yeah.
Drugs.
However you get there.
MDMA. The majority of the anxiety that the general public media felt around the Psychic TV movement was centered around the inclusion of occult symbology that surrounded the music and art collective. Dan Seatman also speaks to this. The ritual known as invocation is one tool of the chaos magic with a K.
There it is.
Haha.
That's
I sounded like when you said it, I could tell.
invocation. I was like, what?
It sounds magic.
Is that a K?
It's a tool modeled on this concept. Invocation is undertaken by the magician to harvest either single behavioral attributes or, out of a whole cloth, an entirely new character. For external viewers, this resembles role-playing. The magician first idealizes a real or imagined archetype, a god form, and then imitates its desired dispositions with such fervor that they turn the corner from merely mimicking affectations to directly channeling the persona. One's body and mind are opened up as invited vessels for the possession of an outside entity. Indeed, one purpose of chaos rituals is to create beliefs by acting as though such beliefs were true. You fake it till you make it, to obtain the power that a belief can provide. So we go back to that William S. Burroughs thing, like they are using their intention and their will to kind of try to like push things forward.
Not too differently from prayer
Yep.
in religion.
Like a way more rad form of prayer, though. You're not just
Yeah.
asking. You're like, all right, we're doing this right
Yeah.
now. Come on.
Yeah.
Well, that would be kind of more
Get
like
in me and we're doing this.
that would be more of a tulpa, like
Yes, exactly.
Almost, yeah.
an actual thought manifestation and making something happen from your own.
That's
your
all
own
magic.
vessel.
Yeah.
All magic, right
Yeah,
there.
that is. Yeah.
And then to kind of go back to their initial discussion of what they were pushing for was this disillusionment or this, disillusion of the codified language of the corporate media, and they're trying to
Fight
get
the man.
get people to stop being quote unquote brainwashed by these tools of the man. So this cult-like atmosphere that surrounded the band and its fan club pervaded the media attention that they received and ultimately lent to their vilification. To quote, the Temple of Psychic Youth's international youth network presented to outsiders as a cult with militant aspirations, though in actuality their unifying feature was way less revolutionary fervor than a wide-eyed affinity for Genesis P-Orage, which is like a pun, right? Porridge, P-Orage.
Yeah.
Hodgepodge of esoteric ideas and tactics strung together from chaos magic. Temple of Psychic Youth was also dissembled as a musical subculture, doubling in the public eye as the Psychic TV fan club, whose members espoused fanatical devotion to the band. Of course, behind the scenes, the reverse held true. Temple of Psychic Youth's machinations were prioritized, while Psychic TV provided the media-facing agitprop. I've never read that word before.
Yeah. So
what is that?
agitprop is agitated propaganda, and that's what John
This
Lennon
guy.
used for a lot of his songs, like "Instant Karma's Gonna Get You."
Yeah.
So like agitprop is like, if this happens, then your workers will turn on you. Don't do that. Or it's like loose lips sink ships, but it's usually like you're gonna kill everyone if you do this one thing. Don't do it.
Hard slogan type
Yeah,
stuff.
sloganeering definitely, but it's a very
Sloganeering.
Wow.
it's a
Learning
very
all types of shit
Yeah.
today,
So
aren't we?
many wrinkles in the brain.
agitprop. Yeah, it's a cool
Nice.
little portmanteau of agitated propaganda.
Portmanteau.
Portmanteau is how you pronounce it.
Whoa.
Psychic TV provided media-facing agitprop and a hype machine in support of the Temple's objectives to weaponize the techniques of chaos magic and experiment with them in the test tube of 80s subculture. By 1991, Temple of Psychic Youth professed to have 10,000 members in its ranks, expanding from the original home base in Brighton, England, to bastions all across the Western world. To accommodate this surge, a larger governing structure came about, access points, as small redoubts for disciples to disseminate radical Temple of Psychic Youth literature and art among the unsuspecting public, and stations that oversaw entire territories of acolytes such as Australia. And then so they started to abbreviate Temple of Psychic Youth as TOPY, T-O-P-Y.
Oh,
So-
that's
Cute.
Australia
Toppy.
was Toppy Chaos. North
Toppy
America.
Chaos.
Oh my God, that's adorable.
Oh, that's a
Hi,
good, yeah.
hello, I'm Toppy Chaos. Hello.
Hey, man, daddy, I'm Fritz.
North America was Toppy NA. And there were
Lame.
other
Always
various ones. Yeah, that's pretty lame. Maybe we can come up with better. Contrary to other youth movements, which instilled fear and loathing in the Thatcher-Reagan managerial class, which is the 80s, kind of the man. The 80s,
Yeah.
the man.
That was the man.
And also woman, ironically enough.
Correct. Margaret. What up, girl?
She can't hear you. Maybe, I don't know.
Yeah, we should-
Through chaos
The
magic, she can.
intention is
Yeah.
there.
Thank
She feels
you
it.
very
go.
much. The construction of the myth was the whole point. Akin to Aleister Crowley and other occultists of yore, they summoned for onlookers. They needed this attention. The appearance of the insurgent factions using viral branding that encompassed hairstyle, fashion, and a striking design profile. Temple of Psychic Youth drew beguiling parallels with other fearsome outside factions already in the public imagery, including Jim Jones's People's Temple, Charles Manson's The Family, and most pointedly, Robert de Grimston's The Process Church, parentheses, of the Final Judgment.
This sounds grim.
From 1981 to 1987, Temple of Psychic Youth's partisans sported coordinated signifiers ranging from military combat dress and priestly garb to elongated rat tails, but above all, the network's identifying icon was the Psychic Cross, developed from the Papal Cross with new pagan affectations. Porridge mused from the Process Church, we saw the need for a logo, a symbol, so I designed the Psychic Cross, a symbol that seems really familiar so that people could find it easy to adopt into their personal mythology.
Genius.
And actually, I will say that this is a gender non-binary person. So this is a
Oh, yeah.
They.
Correct.
Thank you
And
for saying that, by the way.
And they were like that way before the curve.
correct.
Yeah.
That's one of the things I wanted to get into. But in terms of sound, Psychic TV adopted their unique instrumentation, as Dan Seatman describes. In lieu of writing the resonance filter of the TB303 to create the trademark squelch, Psychic TV replaced the 303 on their album called Jack the Tab, which is a lot of people point to as like the seminal kind of like initial thing that started their love of acid house, witch house, that type of stuff.
TB303, like a Roland 303?
I believe so. Yes, it's a synth. I don't know exactly what the different companies are because I'm not a nerd. So
Yeah, I wonder.
Wow.
Yeah, you are.
I wonder if
Just a different type.
was orange juice a part of this movement or no?
you were telling me about orange juice the other day. I don't
Yeah.
know.
Orange juice?
Yeah, orange juice was Edwin Collins. Never met a girl like you before. That was his band,
Oh, okay.
and they took a Roland 303 and they circuit bended it and made like a really cool like squelchy bow, 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 like bass tone from it. So that's cool.
Squelch is the way that Dan Seatman describes it. He says basically failed attempt to imitate a funk style bass.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Boom.
Just as bizarre was Jack the Tab's percussion. Rather than mimic the acid drum machine's kick, hi-hat, syncopated sparseness, the record relies instead on mushy samples of acoustic drums
Oh,
with a booming on-beat snare aesthetic. Again, more industrial than your standard like dainty kind
Yeah.
of like crisp sound.
so instead of like low bass, it's just a snare hitting you right in the fucking forehead.
Just that angry industrial feel, and that's what, and that the clanging sounds, the chaos sounds.
So in addition to their, the synth and the drums that they put into it, they also, one of the concepts for this kind of acid house music style was the usage of an unsettled layering of samples with psychedelic connections in popular culture, spoken word, television, and film clips ranging from The Trip, Roger Corman, 1967, Wild Angels, 66, and hippie figurehead Ken Kesey. So they had a bunch of cool spoken word stuff with these weird industrial kind of like, it's cool. It's interesting. Like
I wonder if playing samples is an element of acid because White Zombie,
They were one of the first bands that really started using the audio samples.
Faster Pussycat, kill.
Yeah, because all the early industrial all had that. When you think about, listen to Ministry,
It's interesting.
yeah, it's always been a part of it.
So, as with all this cool, rad shit that like people do. The man got wind, and he wanted to shut it down. So Genesis P. Orridge was the kind of figurehead of the movement and was subsequently the kind of target of the attempts to drive them, out of the mainstream, as mainstream as they got, out of the public eye. So to quote another article, Orridge said they had never wanted to be the leader of an occult order, although many of those in Topi were frustrated that outsiders regularly saw them as the leader of this group. Accordingly, they separated from Topi, T-O-P-Y, the Temple of Psychic Youth, in 1991, although it continued to fan continuity after their departure.
Because it was badass.
Having been encouraged by Christian groups involved in propagating the moral panic
Not badass.
about alleged satanic ritual abuse, the Channel 4 1992 documentary show Dispatches claims to have discovered videotapes depicting P. Orridge sexually abusing children in a ritual setting.
What?
Police from the Obscene Publication Squad subsequently...
The
right?
Obscene Publication Squad.
Obscene Publication
Please
Squad.
send in the Obscene Publication Squad.
Ops.
Right, what's all this then?
Ops.
Is that what it is? Ops?
Well, obscene
It is ops.
public. Yeah.
Ops.
Them ops.
Ops.
Ops. Always with the ops, man. Subsequently raided P. Orridge's home and confiscated several tons, T-O-N-N-E-S, so cutely British.
Oh.
You want to say like tons, the way
Tons.
it's
Tons.
the way that's
Tons.
spelled.
Aluminium.
Aluminium.
Thank you for that.
Favorite.
At the time, P. Orridge was in Thailand undertaking famine relief work. Fearing arrest and loss of child custody upon returning to the UK, P. Orridge stayed out of the country for several years, settling in the United States. They believe that the negative press and police attention were the result of a vendetta conceived by a right-wing fundamentalist Christian group. It was subsequently revealed that the footage obtained did not depict child abuse. Instead, it was a video artwork titled First Transmission that had been made in the early 1980s, partially funded by Channel 4 themselves.
Whoa!
The footage,
What?
the footage depicted sex magic rites between adults, bloodletting performances, and scenes of the filmmaker Derek Jarman reading passages from the work of Geoffrey Chaucer.
Wow.
Yeah.
Embarrassed by these revelations, Channel 4 retracted their initial accusations.
Fuck Channel
And how
4.
long did it take him?
Too
Too
long.
It just says several years.
Damn. Because I remember when a lot of this was going on.
They've got blood on their hands. That can end someone's life.
It's a smear job,
Yeah.
for sure. It's a smear job. But thankfully, this person, Genesis P. Orridge, is, like I said, extremely well-spoken, extremely intelligent. And one of the things, I'll read this, I really liked it. They're still alive to this day, born in the 50s, I think. Somebody interviewed them when they went to New York City in 2016. We realized the best response was to just go to America and very quietly prove that wasn't what we were like. Just let people learn by themselves that we were intelligent, articulate, thoughtful, loving people, and that in the end, that would deflate everything else. And it did.
That's a great story.
So yeah, there's so much more about this. I wish we could go on and on about it, but it's a very intriguing, interesting.
Splinters in so many different groups. They
Exactly.
were involved with, just television was involved with them somehow, and then they had connections to the Golden Dawn ministry. I mean, there's just so much that whole early '90s industrial acid movement just got into and created their own little cult in a way. Really.
I wonder if anyone here in Orlando has any kind of connection or
I'm sure.
affiliation with Genesis.
If you do, then let us know, because we are extremely interested. And we might honestly go back to this, because this is an extremely cool story, and it has, like you said, so many splinters, goes off in so many different directions. It'd be really tough to get them all, but
Orlando.